Hey there, it is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
Always a pleasure to talk to Dr. Barry Howard. He is the lead pastor at Church at Wyuka. We're going to catch up with him, see what's going on for Easter. And we're going to talk Ukraine. He's got some connections there. We're going to talk about the First Baptist Church is it Korsun, Ukraine, Doc?
That's correct.
Yeah, we'll talk about that and also some workshops, post-pandemic ministry workshops that he's been involved in. We want to know all about it. First of all, how are you?
Hey guys, doing great. It's great to see the spring weather coming in. It's great to be moving beyond the pandemic, and despite the various concerns around the world, it's a great time to be alive and serving.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's do this. Let's catch up with Church at Wyuka. What's coming up for Easter? Multiple services. What do you got going on over there?
You know, this is a great time of the year for many reasons. And after 2 years of having to minimize things during Lent and the Easter season, we're looking forward to a full schedule. And so we've already had our Ash Wednesday services. We're involved in a Lenten series of sermons on the God factor, exploring different things about the intersection of faith and life. And then certainly during Holy Week, which is just around the corner, we'll be having Palm Sunday services, Holy Wednesday services, Thursday, have a Maundy Thursday service. But this year, after 2 years of postponement, the Buckhead community churches are having their community Good Friday service. Wyuka has been on hold to host that event. So we've been spiffing up the campus, getting ready to invite our neighbors and fellow churches to join us at noon on Good Friday. And then, of course, Resurrection Sunday, we're having one grand service, in-person celebration after 2 years of virtual. So it's an exciting time. And by the way, you know, I learned years ago, more people think about their faith and think about God and rethink their faith during the Christmas and Easter season than any other time of the year.
Yeah.
So we want to help them along, ask the right questions as they rethink what faith means to them.
And it's going to be a special Easter Sunday this year. We were talking to another pastor just recently, how not only is this kind of post-pandemic, I mean, we're still kind of dealing with it some, but at least people are loosening up some, and it's not in the middle of spring break for most of the schools around Atlanta. So you might have an actual full house. That's been a while that we've had that on Easter, right?
It's certainly true, you know, and I wish we could sync with all the school systems. It's always a little bit of a challenge when people are traveling, but we encourage them to make the best of those opportunities. But yeah, this year, it falls in the middle of April. We've had a couple of early Easter seasons recently. And so just great timing, and looking forward to welcoming a lot of people back for the first time. Although many have joined us online faithfully, and other churches, they've been faithful to tune in. It's even better to be there in person. Online's always the next best thing to being there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're praying that the altars will just be full during all those events, because I'm thinking that people are just ready to get back to normal, to be bringing friends and neighbors, relatives, whomever, to get back into, to worship and to hear the message. Dr. Barry Howard, lead pastor at Church at Wyuka. All right, we spoke a little bit via email, Doc, about Ukraine, and you have some connections there. And we've been talking, I guess, for weeks, trying to figure out, what can we do? How can we help? And you have some connections there. Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, certainly I've admired the Ukrainians for years for a variety of reasons, but the personal connection, when my wife and I were privileged to serve the First Baptist Church of Williams over in Jacksonville, Alabama, as we were preparing to move to Kentucky in 1995, we didn't want the church, they had gifted us with so many things. We just said, we don't need gifts. We want to hear from you. Well, they overwhelmed us. They came back and said, well, we're going to raise money to build a church in your honor. And so they raised money to contribute toward the building of a church in Korsun, Ukraine, which is now the First Baptist Church. Interestingly, the church had its 20th anniversary in 2016, and I was invited to come and be their speaker. But Russian troops were already amassing on the border, and the State Department encouraged us not to travel. They were discouraging any Americans from entering. So we were hoping to be able to go back, and still hope to be able to go back when this current conflict is over. So in addition to other friends that have served there through the years, we're staying in close touch with Misha and Vera Shapra, the pastor and his wife. They have sent their daughter and grandchildren to a safe place, and they've stayed behind to minister to refugees in Corson.
Mm.
And they're helping a lot of displaced persons. They're feeding, they're fueling cars. And so we're very grateful to be a part of their support team.
What are you hearing from them? What kind of stories are you hearing from them? Hopefully, are they're not in Kiev, however you say it. I've heard it both ways, or some of the main places where the Russians are, or are they being affected as well by the army advances?
So they're not in a direct area of that's being bombarded. In fact, many of the folks that are fleeing Kharkiv and Lviv and Kiev are going south to Korsun. And so some are trying to get out of the country. Some are temporarily relocating, hoping they can get back in their home areas soon when this thing settles. So Misha and Vera stayed behind to help the displaced persons. They've turned the church into a mission center, and they're trying to help people find the resources they need to stay afloat, and which, as you can imagine, is a challenge unto itself.
Right, definitely.
We have been praying and praying for them. God would be their shield, just protect them, and that hearts would, the hearts would be turned. God's will be done in the whole process. We also started praying for the Russian Christians. They've got to be in a hard place. Those that follow after Christ, it is not something that they want to see as well. But we continue to lift them up. Are you being asked a lot of questions, Doc, about what's going on here? 'Cause a lot of times people will think, in times, is this with the bear coming down from the north? Blah, blah. Are you being asked a number of questions or what?
Not as many as I would have thought, though those questions have floated around for years. I appreciate the guidance I was given by one of my mentors years ago. He said, people ask a lot of questions about the end time, speculating, but they just need to remember Jesus' words. No one knows the day nor the hour, and live every day, one day at a time. What I would say is, while we don't want to give away locations, you're right. The Russian Christians are in a bind, and there are many, many of them. So the church that Dave serves, that I was privileged to serve for several years, had a long time partnership with Russia. They were one of the first churches to go into Russia, both with choir and mission teams following the lifting of the Iron Curtain. And so we've been in touch with some of the Russian Christians that we've worked with. And I wanted to know, are you aware of what's going on? Are you getting the news? And the response was absolutely. We know what's happening. And many of the pastors and Christians in Ukraine are not just their spiritual kin, they are their cousins.
Yeah.
So the churches in Russia and the Christian churches in Ukraine, many of them have prayer partnerships where they're staying in touch with one another and helping one another the best they can without the Russian Christians exposing their families to unnecessary risk.
Well, it's good to hear that they're able to keep up and they're actually getting information.
Yeah.
Hopefully all of the information, not necessarily just one side. So what can folks hear? We get so many calls. What can we do to help? What can folks do? Is there a way that they can help through the church where you guys are?
Absolutely. We have two different funds going, but as people have asked, there's so many wonderful ways to help. My personal advice to people is try to help through a congregation or a reputable Christian agency. Don't help through an agency where a significant portion is going to go to administrative costs. Right. World Vision is always a great place to be able to assist. Your denominational entity, Southern Baptist, United Methodist, Episcopal, Lutheran churches all have wonderful agencies that are providing relief and support. There's a group out of Virginia that the folks at Pensacola are working with called Answering the Call. There are actually 3 members of the church at Pensacola that slipped into Ukraine to deliver supplies 2 weeks ago. They borrowed a minibus from a local evangelical congregation and used the bus to deliver supplies in and then used the bus to bring women and children out across the border. Wow. So local churches many times have these personal contacts. Interestingly, at Wyuka, I'm meeting with another pastor right after this meeting. We're trying to get 3 or 4 churches to go together to provide a minibus. It's what we'd call a van, 9-passenger, for the church at Corson. The van has failed. They've been using it to deliver of safety. And so we're trying to pool our funds together. Right now, we don't know specific opportunities for people to go in. People have even asked, can they go to volunteer centers in Romania and Poland? There may be some who are accepting volunteers, but they have plenty of volunteers. They need resources. So the big thing up front is providing funds through a reputable church or agency. We do think that down the line, there's going to be opportunities to go in and help rebuild churches. There's going to be opportunities to sponsor families. There's going to be opportunities to provide specific meals and support for refugee centers. For example, the Ukrainian Theological Seminary has been turned into a refugee camp.
Hmm.
Long term, once the conflict subsides, many don't have homes to go back to. So they're going to be
Yeah.
living in these centers for a long period of
Right.
time. They're going to need clothing. They're going to need food. Going to need teachers to come in and educate their children. So we're still sorting out what the specific needs are going to be. Right now, the big need is prayer and funding.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about the other day on the show. It's, once this is said and done, they're going to want to come back, and rightfully so. That's going to be quite an event as well. They're going to need taken care of. You're right. Their houses are gone, and they just need help. Thank God that there are folks there that can do that. We're talking with Dr. Barry Howard, church at Wyuka. You can go to wyuka.org to find out what Doc was talking about just a little while ago, and of course the Easter services as well. Doc, we chatted just a little bit via email about post-pandemic ministry, and I love this because like you said, folks are starting to come back and get connected again, and churches for the last 2 years at least have been, it's just been video only or just been small groups. You mask, no mask, and you can't get together. So how are you helping the churches, the pastors lead here now post-pandemic?
Well, certainly it's great at Church at Wyuka to have more and more people joining us in person. Obviously, we've talked about that story before. The church has been a wonderful witness to the community in the past. They went through a valley, so to speak, and we're gradually emerging from that valley as we welcome you folks to join us. But the same is true for churches all around the country and around our community. It's a fresh start. It's a new day. One of the things that we encourage pastors to think about is that every church needs to update their mission and vision statement. Thankfully, at Wyuka, we're already in that process when the pandemic hit. So our new mission and vision is even more relevant now than it was just prior to the pandemic. But there is no going back to the old normal. That doesn't mean everything we do will be different. But the church has been in a paradigm shift for the past 10 to 15 years. And biblical historians and church historians tell us that every 500 years or so, it's not a shift in the message, it's a shift in the delivery system and the methodology. What the pandemic did was expedite that paradigm shift so that it cleared the landscape. And it's a wonderful time for a new beginning. I've compared it with our folks to saying, if you're familiar with volcanoes, it's almost like the lava was flowing through the tubes for years and the pandemic was the big eruption. The lava is still molten. We don't know exactly what the post-pandemic landscape is going to look like. Dan said we are emerging. We're not completely out of the pandemic. There'll still be concerns and flare-ups now and then. But as the lava hardens, how do we take the message of the gospel and the love of Christ to a community in this new landscape? And it's to be prepared to treasure the past, embrace the future, and seize new opportunities, realizing that in the future, the church is going to be taking the message to the community more than the community coming to the church to hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so
very
good.
true.
Dr. Barry Howard, church at Wyuka, such good stuff, really. Doc, we'd love to talk to you, let's say somewhere around May or June, just catch up with you. We appreciate just the relationship that we have with you. We're proud of you guys, and you're an amazing guest, an amazing person. Check it out, wyuka.org. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.